Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Hi, I'm Kevin.
And I'm John.
And this is 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger, the podcast where we take a long, hard look back at some of our favorite action movies from the era of Arnold.
Schwarzenegger is the icon of the genre, and we're taking a deep dive into some of these 80s and 90s cult action movies, and we're breaking them all the way down.
We're going to get into the nitty-gritty and examine the good, the bad, the ugly, and the laughable in these movies.
But we're always coming from a place of love. You don't watch these movies as much as we have unless you have a genuine affection for them.
Everybody.
Hello. Hello, Governor.
Is that Australia?
No, it's not.
It's Kevin and John here.
Hey,
and
guys.
We're joined by 6 Degrees of Schwarzenegger founding member
That's
Mike.
right.
Howdy. What's
The
up?
original, the best.
OG.
Right. Glad to be back.
Man, thanks for being with us.
Oh, no problem.
This is exciting to have Mike back in the saddle.
It's great to have Mike here. It's great to be talking about one of my favorite movies, like from my childhood. I'll just go ahead and say that, and I think I've said this before on the podcast, that this is maybe the first movie that I remember seeing in the theater ever.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
And I remember being pissed when Mick Dundee never pulled the buildings apart like he did on the movie poster.
You thought he was going to get huge at some point?
You think this was going to be Crocodile Rampage?
Because I was 4 years old and stupid as shit.
I definitely didn't see this in the theater. I was like, my parents were not taking me to see anything that was adult
Right.
entertainment at that time.
So I was actually 15 when the movie came out, so I'm a little older than you guys.
Hey.
Yeah.
Did you see it in the theater?
I didn't see it in the theaters. Although it is PG-13, but I probably saw it HBO. Like I went over to my cousin's house or something like that. That's the only way I remember seeing it. I remember being like awestruck by the movie.
Yeah.
I knew who Paul Hogan was before any of this stuff came out.
You were a Paul Hogan hipster.
Yeah, so I used to watch the Paul Hogan show as a kid. I used to watch it on wherever it came on, like the public broadcasting in North Carolina, and I used to watch the show and just thought it was hilarious. It was kind of like a Benny Hill or a Monty Python or something like that.
Russ Abbott show kind of vibe from it.
Yeah,
Cool.
So I knew who Paul Hogan was before this movie came out, and I remember being like super excited, like, oh, I know that. It's like like your best friend puts out a movie.
That's
like I know
cool.
that guy, so it'll be cool to see what he does as a film.
So for those of you who haven't caught on yet, we are talking about 1986's amazing Crocodile Dundee.
Oh yeah.
Probably like as iconic of a movie as we've ever talked about on the
Definitely.
podcast. I don't even know if it's technically an action movie, but
Yeah, this is one of those movies it's hard to talk shit about. It's not like the best movie ever made, but man, is it fun. It's sort of
it's
like
like
up there with Lethal
but it's
Weapon.
an adventure. It's not like overly violent or overly like no titties in it or anything like that.
Yeah, it's surprisingly clean.
Yeah, it's funny you say
Kinda
that
tame.
because I remember thinking this is not an action film. This is basically a love story disguised
It's
as
like
an
a
action
romance
film.
adventure type thing, which was a hot genre at that time.
Yeah, kind of like Romancing the Stone or something like
exactly,
that.
yeah.
So
Which this came out in '86, and I think it was like the second highest grossing film of that
Second
year,
highest grossing behind Top Gun.
Yeah,
I know this movie was like hot, so I'm surprised you didn't. I'm surprised you didn't see it, just because I guess everyone saw it.
Honestly, I might have seen it in the theaters. I just don't remember. It was been that long.
He was blackout drunk at 15.
It's been that long ago. I probably was. But I do remember seeing it and being like, it's one of those things where you're like, this is one of the best things I've ever seen ever, right?
Yeah.
So I'm glad you asked me to do this movie because I have
we gave you
fond
options
memories.
and you jumped right on
I
Crocodile
forget what the
Dundee.
other movie was, but
Passenger 57, which is
like,
also awesome.
And I like Wesley Snipes, but I mean Blade on after,
Yeah.
And we should talk about Paul Hogan, since he's sort of like everything on this movie.
Yeah, we were just talking about how the generational likability of this movie some 30 years later all hangs on Paul Hogan's performance. It's like he is like you hang your hat on this movie on him.
Well, like I mentioned before, Paul Hogan had this show, the Paul Hogan Show, right?
Right.
And I feel like he got together with a bunch of his friends because I know that the director, Peter, I think his name is Feynman, or how you pronounce it. He worked on the Paul Hogan Show also. So he probably had a bunch of his friends from that show, and he was like, look, I have this idea. Let's make it into a movie. And you guys know that this is based on like a true story, right?
I felt like I read somewhere that it was based on a guy.
I took notes. Yeah, the guy claims that at least,
Ansel.
although there's some similarities between it. He didn't get attacked by a crocodile or anything. Like, he just got
he was like
lost in the
stranded
wilderness for a
like
while.
56
He was like a Bear
days, something
Grylls
like that.
kind of guy.
and then came back out and was like,
holy shit, mate.
Sort of had he got like a 15 minutes of fame type thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think he got together with a bunch of his friends, and he was like, "Hey, I want to make this movie based on this guy's life," and all of them were.
Or let's rip off his life.
Yeah, exactly.
It worked, right?
But like, you knew who Paul Hogan was. Like, I had no knowledge of who he is before this movie or his history, even before researching for this podcast. Mm-hmm. But like, he didn't just come in entertainment. He was like a construction worker type guy.
Yeah, like truck driver or something.
It said he was a rigger. He worked like painting the Sydney Harbor Bridge.
What? That's awesome.
And stuff. Yeah, like, which was built years and years and years before, but like he'd do maintenance on it, I guess, and shit like that. So
he's like Harrison Ford.
I was thinking the exact same thing. Get out of my head.
He kind of has that vibe, doesn't he? Like, I mean, he is like Australian Indiana Jones.
Sure, and
Yeah,
I think back
definitely.
then you could get away with that. Like, you could be like a construction worker. You know, I want to do movies, and so then you become like an action star. I think that was easier back in the 80s.
Of course.
Yeah.
So basically, in 1971, he's 32 years old. He's sort of like conned his way onto this show. It's basically like the Australian version of America's Got Talent, where the judges would like make fun of bad performance, like Simon Cowell style. And his thing was, he told, I guess, the producers that he was a tap dancing knife thrower. And then once he got on stage, he sort of just did a comedy, like a stand-up routine, making fun of the judges, and the crowd like loved that shit. And first, I gotta say, imagine a scenario in which you say you're a skilled knife thrower, and they're putting you on national TV without like requiring you to perform for them before
Like, we're not even
can
gonna
you
do it.
prove it.
Can you do it once for us just so that
Anything
we know
bad.
you're real?
Yeah, but I feel like Paul Hogan's the type of guy. He's just like a charming person.
Oh yeah,
out
he's
there,
like he's got the gift of gab.
Yeah.
But so he parlayed that into like regular TV appearances on various shows until he got the Paul Hogan Show, which started in 1973. It was a big hit in Australia and then got really popular in South Africa and the UK. And
Blowing up
popular enough here that
across the
the
empire.
young Mike watched it.
I vividly remember watching
awesome.
the show.
And he did like
Absolutely.
cigarette commercials, Foster's commercials.
Which we're drinking right now.
Drinking some Foster's here in solidarity. And commercials for Australian tourism.
Wait, no. So, quick question: was all this before?
Yeah.
It was before Dundee.
Okay, all right.
It was when the show was big-ish,
Sure,
I guess.
okay.
And he was like maybe the most famous Australian.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. Because
Like, I think put another shrimp on the Barbie was like
was
a
his name
from the
Australian
tourism
tourism ad,
campaign or
yeah.
something.
Sure. Because
Yeah.
it was my understanding, and I'm not doubting what you're saying. It was my understanding that when they made this movie, they made it partly because they wanted to increase Australia's visibility to the world, right? It was almost like a giant commercial for Australia, right?
Yeah, truly.
Or they wanted to make something that would be commercially successful in the United States.
Yeah.
So again, I don't remember any of this. Just it's coming off the top of my head, but I thought all that stuff happened after.
No.
Again, I'm not
No.
doubting you, but it's just how I remember it, right?
Sure.
Yeah, it seemed like it was, to me, like for the world, I guess, at large, I think it was this movie, his first movie that he ever did.
The 80s were
was
a banner decade for Australian films.
Oh yeah, the Mad Max
Mad
stuff.
Maxes and yeah.
Dude. But this, like, obviously made him a global superstar at age 47. Is it just interesting?
He's fucking 83 years old now.
He was 47 when he made it?
yeah.
Dude,
That
was
is some
ripped.
Harrison Ford shit. He
aged well,
good
man.
call. Yeah.
Yeah, so
For a chain smoker, he was working
Yeah,
out.
somebody who lived in the sun too.
his face showed it, you know,
Oh,
in the
yeah.
lines and
Yeah.
everything like
Yeah.
that. But so
I didn't know he was 47 when he made that.
no, man. So directed by Peter Feynman,
Yep.
as you mentioned, he hasn't really directed Anything else other than episodes of the Paul Hogan Show?
He directed the Thanksgiving classic Dutch with Ed O'Neill and Ethan Embry.
Are you serious?
Which I've never seen.
Oh, man, you need to cue that up. It's
We
good
talked
watching.
about that shit on our Predator episode because I had this theory that all the best characters ever in films have been named Dutch, which is basically just that. Dutch from Karate Kid and then Dutch Ed O'Neill.
Sure.
Yeah.
Was Dutch in Karate Kid, is he the one that died?
Yeah, the one that died
In real
recently.
life?
No, that's Chad McQueen as Dutch.
Okay.
Like Steve McQueen's
Oh, that's right.
son.
So the guy that played Dutch just didn't want to come back for the thing?
Something like that. He was
Okay.
doing something else, or he
I'm
just
too
didn't
busy.
want to. I think he's got
right.
that
He's
Steve
got a
McQueen money. He's
cancer.
probably off racing race cars and some shit.
I mean,
don't
he
know.
does want to come back and make Karate Kid. I mean, but that's
Yeah,
a
he
story
missed
for another
it.
day.
That's right. He also produced Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest, incidentally.
Oh, Feynman did?
Peter Feynman.
I mean,
That's
I feel
awesome.
like in
Was that an
Hollywood,
Australian production?
I don't know. I thought it was like a Don Bluth movie or something.
I mean, it was
I can't remember.
Fern Gully. I mean,
or
it's
Disney,
got
I can't
Australia
remember.
written all over it,
Yeah,
right?
it sounds
Seems
like
like it.
Fern Gully.
Yeah. But I feel like in Hollywood, you only really need to have like one big hit, right?
Oh.
And then you're set. Then you can kind of decide what
Ladies and gentlemen, I present Paul Hogan.
Which I feel like is Paul. Yeah, he's like, I do something when I feel like it.
Yeah.
Like, I'll do a sequel. If I get inspired to do a project, I'll do a project.
Yeah.
I can respect that. He's not
Definitely.
like just looking to get as famous as he can, because
Yeah,
I'm sure he
absolutely.
passed up tons of offers.
He did, because he apparently after this got tons of offers for more action-y roles.
Yeah.
But he turned them down, saying that the scene, meaning Hollywood, was screaming out for heroes that don't kill 75 people. And he's like, the world doesn't need more Terminators or
Rambos.
Commandos or Rambos. He was like, mix a role model, and he's not a whimper sissy just because he doesn't kill people. And I was like,
I read that quote too, and I like that. It's like, you can be a man and masculine and a strong person without being violent. I would also without
So,
killing people.
I never realized that was like, like people thought that. Like,
Yeah.
like you have to be a man, you have to kill people.
in the 80s.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
yeah,
or
yeah.
now.
like
He
body
also
count,
apparently
maybe.
turned down the Patrick Swayze role in Ghost. I can't confirm that, but I read
I
that.
read that too, and I can't even
With Demi Moore
Yes,
cast?
and Whoopi.
I can't even envision
Yeah, I
that.
can't see that at all.
But I read the same thing, so it must be true.
It's on the internet.
Well,
We
no,
both read it.
seriously, they cast Demi Moore, and they were like, let's get Paul Hogan.
Do you think
He
we
was
could get
hot at the moment.
He was a big deal.
Oh, when did Ghost come out?
89?
I was about to say
Oh,
89,
I thought
90.
it came out in like 91 or
It might
92.
have been 90.
Maybe Paul Hogan was still...
He would've been
He was
coming out- he would've been
easily
coming off the
like 50
sequel.
at that point, right?
Well, yeah, he would have been coming off the sequel and the success of the Subaru Outback commercials in the 80s and 90s. That 90s and early aughts.
Dude, that sequel was legit.
I was watching it earlier.
I kind of want to see it now.
I
Like,
can
I didn't watch it
lend
yet.
you my Blu-ray.
Yeah, you have the sequel.
Of Crocodile Dundee 2?
Yeah.
Yes,
It came in both of them
Yes,
together for like $10.
like-
It's
Yes.
dark. It's a much darker
I would like
chapter
to-
in the...
It is, but that's what I like about
Temple
it.
of Crocodile Dundee and the Temple of Doom.
Exactly.
Produced by a dude named John Cornell, who was instrumental in helping Hogan get his big break. He had been a producer of a show that Hogan appeared
Right.
on regularly, and then he became Hogan's manager and business partner and a co-star on the Paul Hogan Show.
John Cornell died this past July, R.I.P.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Yep.
Written by Hogan,
Hey.
Cornell, and another guy, Ken Shady, who was a longtime writer on the Paul Hogan Show. He never wrote another thing after this.
That's
It was
great.
Paul Hogan Show and Crocodile Dundee, and no more credits for
I
him after
mean,
that.
so this movie made off of like what, $8.8 million,
like $350
like
million
almost, yeah,
bucks.
something
Yeah.
like that. So do you
I would love
really
to
How
see
would
have
he
to?
not? He had to have been getting. Please, like, we just want your name from the writer of Crocodile, because he was Oscar nominated. All of them were for the screenplay.
Yeah, but I think that again, this would be like if we wrote a movie, right? Like just a bunch of guys who are friends, and we're just like, you know what? We really enjoy this thing, right?
Yeah.
So let's write a movie about it, and we do, and it out of nowhere becomes like this huge success.
I promise, if it made $1 billion, we'd be getting offers. What else you got?
We would get offers, but would we want to?
You say, well, that was fun.
Yeah, will we do that, or would we want to?
I'd want to write something else if I had ideas.
but
I'd at least want to try.
You wouldn't want to write what you want to write, though. Like I can imagine they got offers, right? But they were like,
That could
"Hey,
be.
write this Star Wars knockoff, or write
Right.
this
That could
Terminator
be.
knockoff," right? And they didn't want to do any of that, right? So
if you didn't have more original ideas.
yeah, like or
I could
just
see that.
write your own thing, then they probably could have gotten away with it. But
I could see that, I think. Like how if and especially if you're like, hey, I'm set for life and I just want to live a quiet life with my family. I don't need to be a whatever, touring around doing press junkets and
Sure.
shit, whatever they were doing back in the 80s.
So George Miller is probably a good example, right? Like, he's Australian, and he did Mad Max for the love of doing film, right? Like, wasn't he a doctor first? And he was like...
He was a doctor,
He was a
that's
doctor,
crazy to me.
and he was like, I want to make a movie. And so he made a movie, and he loved what he did. But you don't think of George Miller as, like, knocking out, like you don't think of George Miller like you think of Steven Spielberg, who's
hell no,
knocking out all these movies every single year,
Well, he's another
right?
dude who has a passion project. And
Exactly.
Or like a James Cameron. Like, he puts out a movie when he feels like putting out a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Not like, I just want to stay busy.
But I also think James Cameron does it for the money. More so than George Miller.
But I think he won't, like, I don't think you could say, hey, James Cameron, how much money would it take for you to do a new Superman movie?
He'd say no.
I think he'd say, no, I want to tell the story I want to tell.
Right.
Like,
If you'll pay me exorbitant sums,
But he's
will
also
do that.
doing Avatar 2.
But I think
I know what you're
I think
saying,
he
but-
loves that world, and I'm not sold on these sequels.
I'm not either.
We'll see how that goes.
It was
but,
called Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest. We've already talked about
we already covered that.
it. Yeah.
Music by Peter Best.
You never did anything else that you'd be like, oh, I love that score. I never, but
He
this
did a bunch
one's
of little
all right.
Australian productions. The music in
Yeah.
this one killed for
I
me.
like
I
it.
love it.
I like the integration of didgeridoo at tasteful moments.
But he's definitely not the fifth Beatle.
No,
Not
no.
that Pete Best.
We should also point out DP on this movie, Russell Boyd,
Okay.
he won the Oscar for Master and Commander with Russell
Oh,
Crowe.
fuck.
He also did a bunch of great Australian movies, Gallipoli with Mel Gibson. He also did Year of Living Dangerously with Mel Gibson, White Men Can't Jump, and many, many others.
White Man Can't Jump is
So
interesting.
now that guy had a career.
he came
Right.
to Hollywood and
But then there's another awesome connection to a movie we've done previously. The costume design was Norma Morrisseau, who we've mentioned as being responsible for the awesome costumes in Road Warrior, Beyond Thunderdome, Island of Dr. Moreau. So she was responsible for this movie.
So I know I'm jumping like way ahead,
Hit
but did you mention the costume designer? And I remember looking at some of the outfits that Mick
in
Dundee,
Australia.
no, in New York.
Okay.
And I was thinking
Like
to
the
myself,
red
those are
leather
some
jacket?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, those are some nice duds this
Yeah,
dude
man.
is wearing. Like, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy.
No,
like, if he's like this bush.
Everything.
He skinned his own crocodiles, don't you think?
Yeah, but I was like,
He
that's,
tailors his own clothes.
like I'm not. I can't believe that didn't make like a huge fashion statement.
Oh, in the 80s?
Like in the 80s,
Oh,
where
dude,
people
I'm
were
sure
wearing like
people
the
fucking with
boots
that
and the
stuff.
leather pants.
the
and
snakeskin boots were huge.
Yeah,
I don't know about like
I do remember
snakeskin
people
jackets.
wearing boots a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure people were fucking with that stuff after
But like
the
that,
movie
once
came out.
he walks out in the iconic knife scene,
Uh-huh.
like that's a nice suit.
Yeah. But with the leather jacket, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the hat with the crocodile tooth band around it.
Yes.
It's awesome.
So, movie starred Paul Hogan, we've mentioned,
Who's he?
as Michael J. Crocodile Dundee, a.k.a. Mick. He did this. The sequels, Lightning Jack, is the only other thing I remember of his.
Angel.
He did a movie
Almost
called
an angel.
Almost
or
Angel.
something. Almost Angels.
Yeah.
Done a bunch of work in Australia, stuff that I haven't seen. But anytime he puts something out, it's like the biggest thing that year in Australia.
Sure, sure,
And
sure.
the aforementioned Subaru Outback commercial.
Yes, it is iconic, though. Impressive how iconic he is over such a small body of work.
Yeah.
Like, he had that one role that's like 35 years later is still
Sure.
iconic.
I mean, like when you think of Australia, who else do you think of outside of Mel Gibson?
Nicole
Hemsworth's
Kidman,
now, maybe?
Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman.
Huge Jackman.
Huge
I don't even
Jackman.
think of Hugh Jackman as Australian. I don't, but
Yeah, I mean, but I'm just thinking of I think Nicole Kidman's probably the most
Sure.
famous Australian. But Naomi Watts is Australian.
Hugo Weaving.
What's that? Keith
none of
Urban.
those are from New Zealand. They're all Australian.
I think they are, yeah. Yeah, that country singer.
Keith Urban. Random. So random. Fucking what? You can't
Hey,
say country.
But you know what? None of them would
Is
have
Paul-
made it
No.
without Paul Hogan.
I probably 100% agree with you on that statement.
We
It's
weren't
like Paul-
importing Australians before.
Oh, I
well,
guess
Mel
I go
Gibson
to Mel
came
Gibson,
first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Paul Hogan, I think, definitely paved the way. At
Yeah.
least that's our theory.
And
That's
Mel
our
Gibson, when he came
hypothesis.
over, he had to like try to lose the accent.
Right,
You know,
that's
like
true.
for almost everything.
He's not even really
Yeah,
Australian.
he is American.
Yes,
American.
he fakes it. He's like
Yeah.
Christian Bale's English
He can
accent
turn
is
it on.
not real.
When did Mad Max come out?
The original one
Yeah.
was 80.
The first one might have been 79 or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, I think it was.
So Road
several
Warrior
years
was
before,
81.
Several years before this movie.
Yeah. That was the biggest. Yeah, that was like the thing I think that put Australian cinema on the map was the Mad Max stuff.
But I think the difference between, and I don't know if we're getting off subject here. I think the difference between like Mad Max.
There is no subject, Mike. Go with it.
The difference between Mad Max and Crocodile Dundee is Mad Max could have been anywhere, right? It just so happens to be in Australia.
It's a great point.
Crocodile Dundee was like, they were like,
this motherfucker's from Australia. Yeah.
Like, this is Australia, motherfucker.
They were full.
Yeah, Mad Max could have happened in any country in the world.
That's a great point.
Or on any continent.
Yeah.
Also starring Linda Kozlowski as Sue Charlton.
In her first role.
Introducing
That's
Sue.
crazy.
So both the leads doing their first ever movie.
And then they got married.
Yeah, sometime later.
Got married in 1990, divorced in 2013.
It's a bummer.
Yeah.
But she was like a Juilliard-trained stage actor. They found her in New York, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Also starring, I don't know how to say his name, John Malon?
I'm probably saying Malon.
He played Walter Riley, a.k.a. Wally, a.k.a. Walt.
Yeah.
Just pick a name.
He was like a working Aussie actor.
Easily the second best character in that film.
Yeah.
He never really left Australia. I mean, I only know him from this and the sequel.
He died just a couple of years after this, too.
He died just after part 2.
He looked old.
Now, how old do you think he was in this movie?
The guy that played Walt?
Well, now,
Yeah, if you don't know.
if
you
I
already
don't know.
Hogan was 47, and I didn't even know that.
Yeah. How old do you think
He had to be
Wally was?
66.
I would guess mid-50s just because of how weathered the Australian sun would
that's
do
true.
a body.
So he was 51.
What?
He was like a couple years older than Paul Hogan.
He had that cirrhotic liver.
He died young. He was 55 when he died in 1989.
Rest in peace, John Malon.
I mean, he's Australian, but they look like they party hard.
They do. They throw down on the most inhospitable bit of earth on the planet.
Which I definitely would have said, Paul Hogan's 40 and Malon is 60.
See, yeah.
Because he seemed like he's playing a mentor character to him.
Yeah,
like
totally.
A generation older.
It's always interesting when you see the movie and the lead is this age, and then their father figure or their mother figure is literally 5 years older than them, but they look like they're 20 years older.
You definitely get Marcus Brody vibes from Walt in this movie, like from Indiana Jones.
Yeah. What about as always, Mike, I would say don't worry about rambling because if you bore me, I'll just chop it out. Okay. But I'll ramble now and say the dude Terry Silver from Karate Kid 3, who's going to be in the new season of Cobra Kai.
Super fucking excited.
He's younger than Ralph Macchio.
What the fuck? Are you kidding me?
He's 6 months younger.
Say that again.
The guy who played Terry Silver, like the
villain of Karate
Kid 3, not Mike Barnes.
Oh, the one with the
ponytail,
slick back hair.
Yeah.
The evil industrialist.
Is 6
the
months.
guy who fought in Vietnam with John Kreese is 6 months younger than Ralph Macchio.
That's insane.
He looks young in Karate Kid 3, but not 6 months. But Ralph Macchio is well known for having
Macchio was
face.
30, and he was 30 when they were doing part 3, but so was
That's insanity to me. That's absolutely mind. You've just bottled my mind,
Yeah, that's
sir.
crazy. Can I say
Bottled
one
it
quick
right
thing?
up.
Say it.
So you had talked about Linda Kozlowski and how they got married after this film. Or
He was married at the time, which makes it problematic.
He was married at the time. And I think he left his wife for Linda Kozlowski. I remember that being
It was a big deal.
Yeah, I
in the
remember that being
tabloids and shit when
a
it
tabloid
happened.
thing.
Because he was like a global star at that time. It's fucked up. Not to... Never mind. We'll get to it real soon. I have more notes.
They have mad chemistry, though, in this one, so I see it.
I mean, you can't argue with that. Starring also Mark Blum as Richard.
Yeah, he's a guy you love to hate in the 80s movies
He still
and
is
TV.
working, does just a lot of TV shit. And I gotta mention, small part, but Reginald Vell Johnson.
Oh, yeah,
as
man.
Gus.
The great Reginald Vell Johnson.
That had to be his first big starring film, right?
Or he was in Ghostbusters. As
Where?
is the prison guard. Ghostbusters, the mayor wants to see you.
Oh, okay.
Reginald getting it done.
That's amazing to me.
How awesome is it that he was just on screen and then everyone's like, God, that guy.
He's got it.
Remember the guard in Ghostbusters? Give me that guy.
Well, I just think of imagine saying, even if your parts were small, saying, I was in Ghostbusters and Crocodile Dundee and Die Hard. Like,
Well, I'm
those are
pretty
like
sure he
fucking
says.
awesome.
I'm pretty sure.
Family Matters, I'm sure, paid him more than anything.
I'm pretty sure he says I was in Die Hard. So I don't
But,
think
you know,
he's with
imagine just
Ghostbusters.
having that resume. Like,
Yeah.
even, I think of this dude from Karate Kid, the guy who played Freddy Fernandez.
Yeah.
Is like just his neighbor in the apartment building, the one who invites him to the beach party. He was also played the dude who brought like the room service out to Taggart and Rosewood in Beverly Hills Cop. And it's like, imagine saying, I was in Karate Kid and Beverly Hills Cop in back-to-back years. Like the two of the biggest movies of their year and of the whole decade.
And you know
That's
like,
awesome.
You know those movies are popular because of me, right? You know that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
You definitely got laid off that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Reginald Val Johnson, awesome, dude.
And then David, we should mention David Gulpilil as Neville.
Yes,
Yes.
His buddy who turns up when they're in the Outback.
Yeah.
Who was like a famous dancer. He's a famous like
You see it.
choreographer and
He's got
tribal
moves
dancer.
in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome
He
stuff.
was the Australian John Travolta.
That's awesome.
So I guess there's a movie more to
At
talk
long
about.
last, we kick it off.
But before we get started, I
Yeah,
mean,
man.
that's kind of like the awesome thing about talking about movies is you get to go into like you love these movies so much that you want to just like do a deep dive into everything that ever happened to anybody who was involved in the movie, right?
It's so interesting as I've learned from doing this podcast, like how, especially in the action movie world, how incestuous it all is. Like the dude who did the music for Roadhouse also did the music for Lethal Weapon and for Die Hard, and like the same stunt coordinator and the same dudes just turn up over and over and over again.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially back then when it was like a much smaller
It was like a
community.
tight-knit little community.
Yeah.
But I guess with all that in mind, we'll talk about another movie we watched once upon a time. But before we do that,
That's
did you hear
Foster's.
that work for you? That's
Australian for beer.
well, now the can says Australia's famous beer brand. Just does Australia's famous beer brand.
I don't
Doesn't
see
have the
those
same
commercials
ring.
for Foster's much anymore.
No.
I don't recall, but they still are making that big ass can
Because
though,
Foster's is American for Australian beer.
So where'd you get that? Did you get that at Publix or did you get that at a
man. It was
five and dime down the street?
it was at my Kroger, $2
Gotcha.
a can
Nice.
for the 25 and a quarter ounce can or some shit. It's 750 milliliters.
Of 5% alcohol by volume.
It'll get you there.
So it is just barely alcoholic beer.
You know.
So without any further ado, I love the old Paramount screen kicking this movie off. It takes me right back. I love that shit. So we immediately get a downtown Manhattan skyline at night. We see the Twin Towers.
Yeah, prominent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much of a character the Twin Towers were in movies of this time.
Dude.
Yeah,
Think about the
in
new
the
King
90s.
Kong, the 70s King Kong. Didn't he climb one of the Twin
Yeah, he
Towers,
sure
not
did.
the Empire State Building?
Yeah, it definitely adds like a legitimacy to a movie when you see it. It's like, oh, okay,
They're there. Like, they don't have that in Toronto or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Yeah, it's like, oh, this is New York, all right.
Yeah, so we see bustling street outside the offices of Newsday.
It's a real newspaper.
Yeah.
It is.
That was a little strange to me.
Yeah, I don't know that.
It was like they covered like Long Island news primarily. They're still in print.
I was about to
though.
say they must have paid the Bono money from over the top to be the sponsor of
So
this
you're telling
movie.
me they were just like, we don't feel like buying like a new sign for.
I don't
they were
know.
Like, we'll just pay
We
somebody.
don't want to be the New York
Like why?
Sun
Why they
Post
weren't the New York Herald
Daily.
or whatever? Yeah,
Yeah, no one
Daily
knows.
Planet.
I was about to say, it reminds me of the Daily Planet.
I wish they should have taken place in a DC universe.
Oh, that'd be rad.
So we hear a conversation on a phone call. A man, Richard, is trying to persuade Sue to come back home. He says, I'm not complaining about your work. It's terrific, but you are due back in New York. Like, okay, fine. Sue, who's in Sydney, Australia, says there's one more story she has to do. She recounts...
Wait, Linda. She is beautiful. Like she caught my eye immediately.
I told you.
Mike was saying like back in the day you weren't sold on her, but watching her more recently, you're
Well,
like,
what I was
wow.
saying is that I don't remember her beauty. Like,
Yeah.
I don't remember, because I hadn't seen the movie in so long, and I remember looking at it today, and just her beauty, like, really sticking out. Like, she's gorgeous, man.
I'll talk a lot about it.
When I was
fixated on
When
her.
I was watching this movie, the first time I saw her, I was like, that woman is Kevin's type. So
Oh, yeah?
all of our listeners out there, if you've got a sister that looks like 28 years old Linda Kozlowski,
yeah.
Yeah, send her our way.
What about her room, her hotel room? That like the view?
Yeah, right of the harbor and the
It's
bridge.
the Opera House
Bridge.
and the bridge that Paul Hogan worked on.
Yeah.
So what story was she working on?
That's what I want to know. She's like doing lots of stories, and now she's in Australia. She just like checks in every couple
She's
of
already
days.
there doing a story.
People out on Long Island are really like hyped up for stories about
Australian
Australia.
stories, exactly.
I don't know.
I actually kind of buy that.
Unless that's like some kind of global
I think she's just
trade.
spending that money. She's spending the newspaper money to
That's
take
right.
a vacation.
That's probably why they're,
Yeah, she
That's
says.
why he's like, get your ass back to New York. Because
Yeah.
why are you spending all this money? Because he was
Exactly.
throwing money around like,
Yeah, the whole movie.
oh, Millie Willy.
So she tells this guy Richard that she's there to find this dude from the Northern Territory who was attacked by a croc. What was she wearing in this scene? It's like a huge print shirt with like old TVs and
I
radios.
caught
and
her leg though when her leg peeked out.
I dig her shirt, whatever she's wearing.
Yeah, it was
into
nice. Her fashion in this movie was like
Well, that's what I'm saying.
on trend
More
now,
so,
I
she
think.
she looks amazing, but she also sometimes looks like fucking Greta Garbo, inexplicably, with her like head wraps and
yeah,
sunglasses and
there's
things.
that one. Yeah, the one scene where she like is like, screw you, I'm gonna walk on by myself, and then she has
yeah.
like on this giant like hat.
She
with,
looks like girls who are like influencers.
scarf wrap.
Her hat and mosquito net
Yeah.
scarf. We'll get there.
Yeah,
She looks like an influencer.
what?
now.
That's exactly-
That's what I'm
that's
saying. Like
exactly what
she'd
she
be
looks
on
like.
point on Instagram.
That's exactly
today.
what she looks like.
Yeah.
So apparently the guy that she's looking for had his leg bitten off, and a week later crawled out of the bush, got patched up, and then disappeared. No pictures, no interviews. No one knows where the guy is. Richard on the other line, on the other end of the phone, is like not impressed. So she tells him, I've tracked him down. He runs a safari company out in a tiny town called Walkabout Creek, and his name is, get this, Michael J. Fox. No, Crocodile Dundee. Richard is like,
Wait, can we leave already?
Yeah,
That was. I don't know if you've been listening, but there's a rule that John has that once the title of the film is said within the film,
Sure.
then you can
You're
walk
free to
out
leave.
if you
Gotcha.
want to.
You should get an immediate refund too. It's like if they say it in the first like 5 minutes, it's like, oh well, I can leave now.
Did you see early drafts of this movie were titled Buffalo Jones? He's going to be
No, I didn't
Buffalo
know that.
Jones, not Crocodile Dundee. I read an interview with that guy Shady, the writer.
I like that. Buffalo
Buffalo
Jones.
That would have been
Jones.
too much like Indiana Jones.
That's
though.
true. Buffalo Jones. Would
And why not
work.
Water Buffalo Jones? Like, you can't. Like,
Let's
what do you
get
mean?
very
Like, you need an
specific.
American
I think if
buffalo?
you're
Bison,
in,
American Bison Jones.
I think if you're in Australia, that's just a buffalo.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Richard on the other end is skeptical. He says even if it's true, it's going to take you weeks to find the guy. But she's like, I've already made all the arrangements, so go fuck yourself. Richard's like, fine. He's like, I really miss you, darling. So it's clear
Yeah.
that there's some like romantic entanglement happening
Or at least
there.
he is.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely, he is.
Foreshadowing. He tells her to be careful. She says, don't worry, I'm a New Yorker.
That line right there kind of sets up the whole movie right there.
Dude,
Yeah, definitely.
it's an efficient bit of storytelling.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
This 90 seconds or 1 minute
Sure.
or something has like set the stage for everything you need to know.
I would imagine that this would be like the script that you would show in like a screenwriting
Screenwriting class?
class and be like, this is the way you write a script.
For
right?
this
Yeah.
movie that's like 90 minutes long, or like barely over an hour and a half, like so much shit happens.
This-
But it also doesn't feel rushed.
Oscar nominated, right?
Yeah, nominated
Oscar
for best
nominated
original
screenplay.
Best original screenplay.
And then you
Sure.
read some
I think it
reviews,
is. Yeah.
and like the reviews were like, no
Yeah,
one
it
really
was-
liked it.
Well,
the critical reception.
Rotten
was not great.
Tomatoes it's got a solid like an 88%, but a lot of critics were down on it. Notably, Ebert
Yeah, Ebert was like,
was like
this
middle of
movie-
the road.
He was like, it should have been. It feels like a Clark Gable, Carol Lombard movie that never got made.
Which it does have that film,
Yeah.
like the sassy New York reporter is
Yeah,
going to
she's
go and
spunky.
meet like a rugged,
Sure.
it's like it happened one night type shit or
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, or even like African Queen. Or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. How does Rotten Tomato work with films that were made before Rotten Tomato?
That's a
was-
great
I
question.
think they just go
Was
round up all the
made-
old. They just go look at all the old reviews and average out
Sure.
the positives and negatives, like to give
Yeah.
it a percentage. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's not new reviews. It's all the old shit that was written way back then.
Which I appreciate that somebody went through and
Yeah.
did like aggregated
They're
all
doing
that
the hard
data.
work for podcasters
For
like
people
us.
like us. So we cut to just some badass, like natural photography of the outback. Fuck yeah.
Killer music.
Yeah, I was about to sing the running man
Wow.
tune. Yeah. So the helicopter, I love the shot. The opening shot of the helicopter, like zooming over, is badass during the title sequence.
Sure.
The theme music is awesome. Pervasive use of the tritone, the devil's interval, interestingly enough. We cut to an older gentleman. This is Wally, nervously combing his hair as he waits beside. It looks like a little like a short bed El Camino or something.
Yeah.
I know. That was kind of pimping though, like his little truck. I saw that truck and I thought, oh, John's gonna like that vehicle. It's like a bespoke thing, like you said, like someone's rigged. It's like something out of Mad Max.
I mean,
like something that's just been slapped together.
Yeah, I feel like all the vehicles in this movie were like,
especially the safari truck.
Oh,
in
yeah,
a junkyard somewhere and just put it together.
Yeah, the vehicle that he's in is marked Never Never Safari Tours. Helicopter comes in for landings, blowing dust and shit on this guy. Chickens are flying everywhere.
Yeah.
It's kind of awesome.
There should have been I don't know if it's in the credits, but no animals were harmed in the making of this movie.
There should. I had that thought later on in the fishing scene.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they were harmed.
Man,
Well, you don't know.
Barramundi. So the older man approaches the helicopter. Sue's like walking towards him with her things. He introduces himself as Walter Riley of Never Never Safaris, and business partner of Crocodile Dundee. He loads all her bags in the back of his vehicle and helps her in. He apologizes that Mick's not there to meet her himself, but that he is in town somewhere.
It's good, it's a good touch to sort of add that anticipation. Or whatever.
I'll say this guy
hold back, but you don't get to meet the title character right away.
Yeah.
So I got that he was kind of pissed, because these two guys are in a business together, and he's like, "Well, Mick should have been here, but he's not here," and he's like, "Oh, this is Mick again."
Well,
totally,
Walt is he's the business savvy guy,
Yeah, exactly,
and Dundee is the talent.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So he pulls up in front of the Walkabout Creek Hotel. There's a Foster sign above the door. Cheers to all of our Aussie friends out there, or all of our American friends drinking what used to be an Aussie beer.
Damn, it looked hot there.
Yeah, it did. It looked arid. So they get out, and as she's having a look around, he welcomes her to town. It's definitely not much to look at. It is barren.
It's like a ghost town, yeah.
He tells her he took the liberty of booking her in the hotel, and then he confirms with her that she said that she's prepared to pay $2,500 for this exclusive story with Mick J. Dundee.
I did research on how much money is that. I don't know, like in '87.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently,
and in
Australian dollars.
In Australian dollars too, because they had the English pound, right?
Oh, I think they have their own. They have their own unit of money.
Oh, okay.
So 2,500 Australian dollars is the same as about 6,000 Australian dollars today.
Okay,
which is about the same as 4,500 US dollars.
Sure.
And
that's just for an interview and some pictures,
and the excursion, right? Like to guide her through.
Because at this time there was no reason for them to think that he was going to go to New York. So that's not a bad for 2 days worth of work.
Yeah, this probably covers
great money.
The same as taking a group of people out on a safari or whatever.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump back real quick because you had mentioned the helicopter shot when they fly in. I think that says a lot about the cinematographer for this movie, because Australia, especially the outback of Australia, is notoriously known for having nothing to see, right? And the fact that he filled up the screen with just beauty, is a testament to his skill.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of it through this first half of the movie, the Australian half.
Sure,
just beautiful scenery.
But the first half of this movie is an Australian tourism commercial. They picked some great spots to film.
Was it just me, or to me, I thought Walt seemed kind of nervous?
Yeah,
in the thing, maybe they're on the brink of bankrupt, the company, whatever, or just that they've got a lot riding on this. They need this interview to go well.
Out in the middle of nowhere in the Northern Territory, even the most ardent backpackers or adventure tourists, I mean, that's a hard place to go visit. Hard place to get to, I would imagine, if you don't have the money. So she confirms, I am willing to pay $2,500, but I expect to see where Dundee was attacked and to know how he survived. So we cut to later that night. Walt's taking Sue to the local watering hole. That bar is awesome, by the way. If not a little overlit, it's a little light in there. Turn the lights on.
Everyone in that place looked like they needed a shower. There.
Just dust blown grapes of wrath. People.
It's you can almost smell it.
You want to talk about great casting of extras? Yeah,
I feel like those had to be authentic, people who lived out in that area.
Definitely. Yeah. And I bet Paul and Paul Hogan and whoever else are like, I've got some buddies that would be great in this movie.
Yeah.
So Sue notices some good blokes, to use a Australian word, named Donk and Nugget, who are great names, taking bets on their little beer challenge. The littler guys punch Donk, who's holding a full beer glass over his head. They punch him in the stomach.
Well, who can make him spill?
Yeah, and Donk has apparently never spilt a drop.
So I don't
It's
think
a memorable gag.
I don't think that should count because Donk holds the beer. Right? Am I wrong? Doesn't he hold the beer? Like if you put the beer on your head and you're like this, and you get punched and you don't drop
That's a good
it.
call.
That is a great
But
call.
That'd be a
holds
better-
the beer.
I guess the thing is, no
dropping
one can
it.
make me sort of double over or whatever.
If he like gingerly is holding it by the handle, maybe. But I get your point to like if
It
But
would
he
be
shouldn't
better,
be
yeah.
holding the beer.
man, missed opportunity.
That would have been. That actually
Damon,
would have been. But I
you
agree.
fuck.
It's a movie, right? You can make that happen.
Yeah,
like
sure.
you can just have him not holding it and have somebody punch him in the stomach and then not drop a beer.
Definitely.
It would add to the mythology of the film, you know?
Yeah, I'm
Definitely. Donk would have been a much more prominent character. As it is, he is not. So Sue asks Walt if Dundee partakes in these kinds of antics, but no, he's like, Walt's like, no, he's more reserved. He's very reserved.
Right. Yeah.
So Walt goes into telling Sue the legend of Crocodile Dundee. There he was doing a quiet spot of fishing when all of a sudden, bang! And apparently a giant crocodile came up, turned him over, bit half his leg off, and dragged him under. Dundee, of course, killed the crocodile. I mean, any normal man would have just turned up his toes and died. But not our Mick, no. Hundreds of miles, snake-infested swamps. On his hands and knees, he crawled right into Catherine. And then the bartender, Ida, butts in, straight past the hospital and into the first pub for a beer. And accuses him of, blowing the story up.
He's like, yeah, that story gets better every time. But it's like a tall tale.
Yeah. So Walt looks deflated. Because, I mean, that's like, Walt is their commercial.
Sure.
You got to know something fishy is going on at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Something's not adding up about the story.
It almost doesn't make sense that he would tell that tall tale because obviously the truth's going to come out.
That's
right.
what I got in. It's weird to be saying that shit when she's about to meet him.
Yeah.
But anyway.
No one said Walt was a good businessman, just that he is the businessman.
He's a huckster, yeah.
So at that moment, a knife comes whipping through the air and slams right into the bar. Sue jumps up scared. She's startled. A commotion breaks out in the bar as a man comes through the door and he's wrestling a crocodile. Everybody that's in there is scattering around. Sue's freaked out, but it becomes apparent quickly that this crocodile is not alive. The man who stumbled in picks it up and cozies up to the bar. It's 2 beers, one for me, mate. And this is Michael J. Crocodile Dundee.
Great introduction.
Yeah, it's
one
very
of
funny.
the classics for sure.
You had the crocodile leather vest on, no shirt.
It's one of the, I'm telling you, it's I remember this movie so well that as I was watching this, it was no time had passed since the last time I'd seen it. I was I remember every detail of this movie.
And I bought it, and I hadn't probably seen it in 10 years. Mm-hmm. And as I'm watching it, it was all just flooding back the memories.
Yeah.
I can
amazing.
remember beat for beat what was going to happen next. It was awesome.
He had that. I liked that he had that big pimpin' feather in his hat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
As well. I don't know what kind of bird that's off of, but man, that was sweet.
So he immediately notices Wally and Sue, pulls his knife out of the bar, croc under an arm, and moseys over. He and Sue are immediately giving each other the long up and down. Both of them are looking at each other.
Well, I think she's where's your missing leg, motherfucker?
Yeah.
That's what I got.
It looked sexy to me.
Okay.
Well, he was definitely giving her the up and down, though, for
Hey,
sure.
you don't get many women of that quality probably in Walkabout Creek.
Definitely
Well,
not.
you don't like Ida?
I was oh, shit.
You know what, though? I will say that other bartender, the auxiliary bartender, was smoking.
Auxiliary. I want to be known as auxiliary bartender.
Dundee was giving steady wisecracks, though. He was just a jokester, man.
Yeah.
So music cranks up in the background. Mick grabs Sue, starts dancing with her. All of his friends are hooting and hollering.
Which that's a little bit of obnoxious of him.
I agree.
I think he's supposed to rub us wrong
at first,
a little bit at first. This dude's just grabbing this woman and dragging, he's just sort of pushy guy,
right?
And brash and loud. And
the way I looked at it, I feel I don't think this is Mick on a regular Tuesday night, right? I think that he knows that they have this big city reporter in town.
Oh, good call.
I think he's shit-faced.
He's trying to play the
I'm
character.
sure he is.
Is he
That's an
drunk?
interesting point. He's not. We
haven't seen him.
He does get sort of tipsy later on in the movie.
I don't remember him ever being like drunk in the film.
He's not drunk.
Yeah.
He was a little wobbly at one point, towards the end. But
I think he's just making a big show. I think that's why he was late. I think he was like, he came in.
Building the suspense.
Yeah, I think that's why he threw the knife in. I think that's why he came in wrestling the cross.
So you don't think he does this every night?
No, I think every other night he just walks in the bar and is like, give me a beer, right?
That's a fucking astute observation, and it makes me, like 100%. I'm not as bothered by him just like grabbing Sue to dance. I think he's just showing her
he's
like
playing. He's being a character.
Yeah, he's playing, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I think through the movie we'll see he's, I think, trying to act the way that he thinks that the tourists will have stories to take home. Right. You know what I mean? Like,
which is actually kind of frustrating because he is the person that he really is.
Well, then you see him in New York where he's the fish out of water, and he's like a genuine, affable gentleman guy.
Everyone loves him. Yeah.
And he doesn't have to try that hard. So Sue seems unamused by all this, says she thought a crocodile had bitten half his leg off. Dundee says that's a slight exaggeration and rolls up his pants leg to show her a massive scar. A love bite, isn't that what he calls it?
It was just a love bite or something, yeah.
Sue stares. Everyone, I mean, it's because it's a nasty-looking scar, and they exchange a fleeting glance.
I think it was enough to impress Sue. It's like, okay, at least there's some truth, a grain of truth to this story.
Right. I think that's the first time that he kind of like really shows him his true self.
Yeah.
Like he's like, no, this is the real me. Like this was, that story is exaggerated, but this is the real story. This is really me right here, this giant scar. And that kind of comes out in threads throughout the whole film, you know?
Yeah. She was into it, I think. There was like a little glance between them.
They go back to dancing, and his charms seem to be breaking through. Sue's smiling. There's, like, right next to where they are, there's this group of hunters who have not been amused by Mick's antics. The ringleader, who we know by his big glasses and cowboy hat, like, loudly accuses Mick of being a croc poacher.
Yeah. Wait, I gotta say, the youngest dude in that crew is Brett Hogan, Paul's son.
Huh.
Oh, no way, really?
Who was, I think, older than Linda Kozlowski, which is kind of a little creepy.
Wow.
That was like his child from... I mean, he got married when he was like 18 to his original wife or something. I think they had a kid.
He was born at like 36.
At the same time. So I think he did have a child who was about 30, and Kozlowski was maybe 28 or something.
Man, you got some research, dude.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little creepy when it's young, like,
but I didn't know that
that's my new... He's going to cheat on my mom with this.
What's my new boo thing?
They didn't know that at the point, right?
She's your age, son. And the son's like, I want to fuck my stepmom.
That's like some Bill and Ted.
Exactly.
Remember when I asked your mom to prom?
Shut up, Ted. So yeah, Sue is telling Dundee that she wants him to take her out to where he was attacked and give her the full story of how he survived. Just the two of us out there alone? Got my reputation to think about. So the ringleader...
I love the fact that he's a jokester. He doesn't take himself seriously.
He's fucking Peter Pan. I love it. So the ringleader like reaches over of the douches that are sitting at the table. He slaps Mick on the butt and asks where a fella can shoot a few crocs. And Mick seems to, like, he's like,
how would I know? Shit for brains.
He doesn't like the croc poaching wisecrack. So yeah, he calls the dude shit for brains. The guy gets up, takes his glasses off. He's like, every man and his dog in the joint knows you're nothing but a bloody croc poacher, which I still don't understand. Like, I guess that's just how rumors get started. Or maybe, do you think Mick maybe did have a shady past? Doesn't seem likely.
I mean, we know for sure he was maybe out there doing that very thing, right?
Yeah, and there's a couple points.
He says he was just fishing.
But there's like there's some gun shells all in his like boat.
Barramundi's a big fish.
Oh, fair enough.
A bloody big fish.
Maybe Mick is a reformed poacher. Perhaps.
What would you do? Like, is it the skin? You sell the skin?
Yeah, you sell the skin, the bones,
maybe the teeth,
taxidermy, things like that.
Yeah, sure.
Put him in your hat. He does have a crocodile tooth hat. Anyway.
He's killed a croc before.
Yeah, so
we know this.
Dundee punches the shit out of that dude with one epic punch.
That punch was amazing.
He's a one punch guy too, right?
He is throughout the movie.
Everybody he hits is like one punch and they're like out.
That one hitter quitter.
Yeah.
And then he goes right back to dancing with Sue.
And nobody in the bar really is like... Well, the
regulars are like, get these fuckers out of here.
Don't come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're happy to see him go. Mick apologizes, but says he won't tolerate them using bad language in front of a lady. Clearly sensitive about the poaching accusations, which we'll talk about later.
I mean, I guess by definition, it is a crime.
Yeah, totally.
Dude, the extras, man. That dude in the mesh T-shirt.
Oh yeah.
Did that guy catch your eye?
Oh, that was
Wanna do the halfback?
I don't know. Nah, I don't know if he was that guy or not. There was just a dude who looked shit-faced drunk, who had like a mesh T-shirt on and was just filthy looking. Like just
they were all nasty looking.
These dudes, they had to have been real.
Do you think like I don't know who would be in charge of that, like
community bathing and Walkabout
Well,
Creek?
just like in the movie and in general, like would that be costumes? Would that be
costumes
production?
and makeup?
Yeah. Did they just like slap a bunch of dirt on these guys?
The dirt, yes, but I almost feel like the clothes almost just seem like just wear what you got.
And they had, maybe that was
they definitely came out of their house with those clothes, right?
There's a studio portrait of my younger brother and myself when we were 1 and 2 years old, where I am wearing a mesh tank top.
Oh, hell yeah. That's
why anyone thought that was the look for the portrait.
Well, I think we all know, like, these characters are sort of like the Australian version of rednecks.
Yeah.
Kind of. And I wondered to myself, like, if Australians find this movie offensive.
I've wondered that.
Like, if they're like, come on,
that's
the rest of the world, like, is this what you think? I mean, or it spreads the image of, like, this is Australians.
Yeah. That's a good question.
But it's like
cosmopolitan Australians are like, they don't.
I'm sure people in Sydney and Brisbane and Melbourne are like, we're not like this at all.
Yeah.
But I feel the same when there's just characters from Georgia.
Yeah.
And it's like, and they're dumb hicks or whatever, or all racists or whatever it is. So anyway.
So at that moment, Mick breaks away from the dance to go have a go at Donk in the beer challenge. He makes like he's going to punch him, but then just like sort of steps up gently and lays a big kiss on him. Donk flings the beer back and then just starts swinging away and like trying to fucking kill him.
I feel like not really though, right? Was he just putting on a macho display?
I think that Donk was like trying to hit him.
I like that first swing for sure, yeah.
And I don't think that it's the first time that Mick and Donk have fought. Probably they've probably been at it before.
Okay.
So the crowd's like everyone's laughing. Donk like calms down pretty quickly when he gets a fresh beer.
See, that's when Dundee slid up to that bartender, like the other one who had it going on, and sort of was snuggling up with her.
Yeah, but again, I think it was all for show. The fact that he even had the idea to like best Donk on that particular night. Like any other night, he wouldn't have cared, right?
But I do think Dundee is like the life of the party, though, right?
Oh, yeah, always. Yeah.
He's like everyone's best friend or whatever.
Have you ever known a Mick Dundee in real life? That one guy that just shows up and it's like electrifies the place.
Yeah. I hate those guys.
And I was about to say they never have like good backstories, right?
Yeah, they usually like
they're not likable.
They usually have abused their charisma.
It's a shame, but it's true.
Yeah, there's always like a sad part to that story.
So Walt is apologetic to Sue about all this, but she seems intrigued by what she's seen. So we cut to...
I think she knows it's going to be a good article.
Yeah,
like,
this story's going to kick
This guy's
ass.
a character.
This is my Pulitzer. So cut to the next day. Mick, Walt, and Sue are driving through this beautiful yet rugged landscape. It is amazing scenery. They're bumping around in that like open-sided truck with the boat lashed to the roof.
Yeah, that thing is that was the thing when I saw it, having not seen the movie in forever. I'm like, oh, it's that fucking car. Like I could have drawn that from memory. I think. Yeah,
and then like this whole scene is some shit that's like coming up like the with the water buffalo, some stuff that I still do today, like with the little anyway. So while they're riding, Sue says she hopes that Mick isn't reluctant to talk about himself, and he's like, nah, it's my favorite subject. So
I love
she asks where the crocodile nickname came from, and he's like, that was Walt's idea because it's good for tourism. She asks how old he is, but Dundee says he doesn't know. She doesn't believe him, but Walt explains that Mick was raised among the local Aboriginal tribe. And that they don't really keep track of things like that. That one of the elders told him, when asked, that you were born in the summertime, and that's all we know.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it's at this point that we should probably discuss a little bit of preferred nomenclature.
Yeah, I would say like we don't really have a grasp of Australian politics or like what's politically correct in Australia. Off the top, we'll say that.
Right.
So if we say something that's wrong, like please chalk it up to that, and feel free to contact us and let us know. If email or social media or whatever, but like anytime we're gonna make reference occasionally to Aboriginal people, in the course of discussing the movie, and I've done research on the subject to try to educate myself. So please forgive me if any research is incorrect.
There's a massive movement in Australia, which I wish that the United States would follow suit, and emulate, called the Reconciliation Movement. And it's a government program. And the nomenclature that the Reconciliation Program uses is Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. So I think Aboriginal is like the best that you can get to from like a government accepted, thing.
I mean, from what I gather, it is a lot like Native American people here in the U.S. Like that there's not it's a complex issue and there's not a firm consensus.
Yeah, and that most of those people would rather be called by the language that they speak, because they speak so many different tribal languages.
It makes sense, right? Because people aren't a monolith. You can't just say everyone agrees on this thing.
And then from my viewpoint, I distinctly remember when America made the transition from being, because I'm black, guys, the transition from being black to being African American.
And now black is the preferred term.
Right? So I remember when my white friends would call me African American, how weird that sounded to me. I never thought of myself
What
that
feels
way.
normal now?
I'm black. I've always just been like a black guy, and I've never. Honestly, I feel weird if somebody calls me African. It feels too proper,
Sure.
But that's me. So it's what Kevin's saying. We're definitely not trying to be disrespectful or offend anybody when we say what we say. Obviously, what you want to be called is your right.
Right,
sure.
But it's not our intention to offend.
Totally.
So this movie uses the outdated term of Aborigine.
Right.
Which is, out of favor with the community now, with good reason. I read a great quote where those people from that group say, we didn't give ourselves that name, so that's why it's offensive. And a lot of those same people feel the same way about Aboriginal and Torres Islands. There's Torres Strait Island people, because it's those aren't words that we used before white people came here and told us that's what we were. So I totally get it.
Yeah.
So having said that, it is a little weird because I feel like Paul Hogan is somebody who's truly in love with Australia and truly has respect for his country. So I can't imagine that he would intentionally be disrespectful to.
Well, I think that was the word.
That was just the word.
The same way that you could.
But obviously, there had to have been another word that they were calling themselves.
I don't know.
Just didn't.
I think if you went to the 1950s, everyone would talk about Indians in America. And even people maybe who loved the culture and loved Native American people, but that was just the word. So I don't know. It seems like in a perfect world, we'll call you what you want to be called. For the purposes of this podcast, I think we'll use the generic Aboriginal people.
The most widely accepted term that we could find was Aboriginal.
With no malice. But as Mike says, I get the vibe from the movie that Paul Hogan and the other filmmakers were trying, especially with the Aboriginal stories, that they're very respectful.
With the Aboriginal people in Australia, and then when the character is transplanted to the U.S. with his dealings with black people, he seems open and
I think he's really reverent of, in the context of the movie, supposedly that's the community that Crocodile Dundee grew up in.
he was raised by. Yeah, exactly.
So anyway.
Yeah.
Sidetrack.
So there you have that.
But back to the film, I suppose.
But it's an important.
No, it's important.
It totally is.
For sure.
Because it comes up a few times in this movie, and it's worth explaining. So then Sue asks Mick if there's a Mrs. Crocodile Dundee, and he says, I love it. I was sort of married once. Nice girl, good cook, big, and then makes a big tracts of land sort of deal. But he's like, then I went on Walkabout, and when I got back, she was gone. She's lost on the word walkabout, which Walt explains means to wander around to discover new places, which is a charitable definition, which I think is the accurate definition, but not in Mick's case, because Mick was gone for 18 months, apparently.
I like that moment where, Sue sort of sarcastically is like, oh, she didn't stick around.
Strange. Yeah, Mick's
And the way Wally said it, I was wondering, was, not his daughter, but was it his
interesting
niece? Or he kind of said it in, you're a little dick for doing what you did. it.
Yeah, you get the feeling that Walt has been around for all of this stuff and sort of had to like
surrogate
watch.
father type.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, is it Walt or Wally?
It's
Both.
all of the above.
Interchangeable. You
Walter,
call him whatever
Wally, Walt.
You call him whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
As Mick turns his attention back to the road, he brakes suddenly, and this is the moment that I still to this day, when trying to like get something to go my way, will like make the hand gesture in this.
You make the noise.
So there's a water buffalo standing in the middle of the road. Mick honks the horn. It's not moving. So he gets out of the truck and approaches it. Sue starts snapping pictures, and Mick seems to like do this weird hand gesture thing and like mesmerizing. He's like humming, and it just plops down in the middle of the road. And she's amazed.
I don't really see how that's any better for them than having it standing in the middle of the road. Like, it's blocking the road still, right?
Okay, I'm going to drive around it now. I don't
It's
know.
like a cool trick, but it doesn't actually accomplish anything.
Well, then something I don't understand. So Walter calls it. He calls it "Ma never matter," an old bushman's trick, and then he makes this face as though he's like annoyed with Mick or something. I don't even know. Like, is he mad that he showed off his superpower, or is he mad that like? What's the deal with that face? I was wondering that all day. I was like, I don't understand. Like, why
I
is
didn't
he
even
sort
catch
of annoyed?
that look.
Yeah, he makes this. He makes it's sort of like if Superman had done something, and your friend who's trying to keep the fact that you're
secret.
Superman from people, and he's like, oh yeah, it's just a no.
But he's just using his heat vision to like heat up a hot pocket or something. You're like, Superman, God damn it.
Yeah, and he's like, fuck. So it's sort of the vibe that I got from Wally there.
Apparently they had that water buffalo like all doped up.
Oh,
Tranquilized.
Can you imagine like a wild?
Sad.
You know they got that from the Australian zoo.
Probably Sydney Zoo. So yeah, we cut to some more beautiful nature photography of a boat out on the lake. The trio are cruising along in a shallow lake in a John boat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's like big lily pads and flowers and things.
They filmed all this stuff at this Kakadu National Park in Australia.
Right.
Huge place, awesome.
Yeah,
And we talked about it on Road Warrior. Like, I want to get to Australia.
I want to spend 3 weeks there.
No, it definitely makes me want to
months.
travel there for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, it's so cool.
and they did a good job of showing, because every time I think of Australia, I think of like all the animals that will kill you, right? Like the snakes and stuff like that. But they did a good job of not really showing that, right? I mean, they showed the
There's a snake.
crocodiles and there's a snake, but I think like the running joke is literally every animal there can kill you, and I didn't really get
Australia
that.
has evolved to cause harm to human beings, which makes you wonder why we decided to make a colony there. But anyway, it's because there are precious metals there, you guys. That's why.
Of course.
So while they're riding in the boat, Mick points out a crocodile on a bank. Sue's like freaked out and she like jumps. Then there's this dissolve effect, and we see the boat pulling up to a shore. They're unloading their gear from the boat. Walt tells Sue that he's going to be back to pick them up at their destination in a couple of days.
Sue was looking good.
I do love this thing where as Mick is walking by Walt, he kind of like grabs his arm and looks at his watch, and then like kind of like looking up in the sun, like it's like it's about 2:20. Better get a move on.
I love that shit. That's what I'm saying. Like, he pulls that shit, I think, just to put on a show for Sue.
Yeah, no,
like for her benefit. So it'll be good for her article.
It's going to be good for the
But
article.
you know what's so frustrating is that there's scenes like that where he looks at Walt's watch and he's like, oh, it's 2:20, right? But then there's a scene like 10 seconds later where he actually does some mystical, magical shit.
He
right?
does have it like that.
So
He's got it like that.
I wouldn't be surprised if he really could look at the sun and tell you that it's 2:20.
But maybe not to the minute.
And maybe
I
he
would
was
not be surprised.
maybe he was feeling lazy at that moment. He was just like, I don't have time to put the stick in the ground and do the sundial thing. I love that Sue's amazed. Walt plays right along at a little bit of like a brilliant bit of self-promotion. He's like, Mick's the best bushman in the territory and the best pupil I ever had. Attaboy.
Walt's amazing.
So Mick and Sue set off into the wilderness. Walt calls out, until Wednesday. And then Mick, what's today, Walt? Monday. And he's like, nods.
What a life that Dundee has.
I love the writing from Walt at that moment is like, it's the truth that we should all ascribe to, and that is in regard to Mick not knowing what day it is. Doesn't know, doesn't care, lucky bastard.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck yeah. That would be the thing. It doesn't matter what day it is.
That's when you hit the sweet spot of a vacation, is when you lose the track of what day of the week it is.
It's kind of what the pandemic was, right?
For sure, weekends kind of lost all meaning.
Exactly.
Like,
there was definitely a point during the pandemic I was like, what day is it?
I don't know who I am anymore.
My question is, why did Walt have to go out there with him?
to bring the boat back?
I think you had to take the boat back.
Is that what it was?
I guess so. I don't know, but that's not. I mean, yeah, you're right. He's.
It really.
I think he's just their
serves no
ride,
point.
and to take the truck back.
And also, I think
yeah,
to maybe set the lady reporter at ease and not being out there with just a rando for the entire time. I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah.
She's probably used to that sort of thing.
I guess so. But that seems like that's a hefty first episode.
Yeah.
We covered a lot of ground in the Outback.
Did.
From one end of the territory to the other.
Sure did.
We hope you guys will join us next time, including all of our friends at the Last of the Action Heroes Podcast Network.
Oh, yeah. Hey, what's up, guys? We see you.
All of our friends out in Australia, we love you. We're doing this one for you guys again after we hope we didn't botch Road Warrior too bad. And we'll be back.